cowshed. I thought we're going right back to the stable here. She said it was a very hygienic cowshed. But why a stable? The feeling now is that it wasn't a stable where just animals were. It was the part of the house that was sunken with the feeding trough, and the animals were kept inside the house. Central heating at early Christian time. We might well be doing that again. I did read that someone who's lost their electricity for a week had to take the dog and the cat to bed with them. Lots of moans about all electric houses. So here we are at the census in, we think, AD 6. And although we know that Mary and Joseph went, Mary didn't have to go. Joseph could have gone and could have registered her as his wife. It didn't have to travel. But of course, Joseph was being faithful to his promises to God to look after this baby and Mary. And if he had left her behind, she would have been very open to the criticism and censure of neighbours, the good old gossip mongers. And in fact, she hasn't stayed in Nazareth. If you read, I didn't really pick this up till this year. She actually goes to stay with Elizabeth for a long time, away from the prying eyes and nagging wives. Was she living in fear? Was she sort of wondering what it was all about? Or did she know God's promises were faithful and that all would be well? We understand from the early church that she came from quite a wealthy family, so presumably she was educated, hence the wonderful Magnificat that she was able to say. So we have Mary there, possibly apprehensive, certainly apprehensive. Who isn't before they give birth, ladies? But perhaps a little fearful about what people are saying and thinking. And then we have the shepherds. They were very much the outcasts of society. Their job was to be outside the town, in the fields, looking after the sheep, who were not regarded with any kind of, goodness at all. They were just sheep. And the shepherds actually lived with them all the time. They didn't go back into the town. They couldn't get to the synagogue, and therefore they were regarded as cut off and unclean by society. You could almost say that they're living in a very early lockdown bubble, forced back on themselves and on the work that they have to do. And yet, God breaks through. He breaks through into history and sends his angels, not to the rich and the powerful and the educated, but to a young girl and her boyfriend, and to these shepherds who were not looking for God and not expecting anything to happen, but whose lives were transformed by the experience. In the newspaper yesterday, there was an article by someone who said he himself was a doubter, encouraging people to go to church this week and to find out what it's all about. And he said it's a strange, bizarre and beautiful story of God coming down to earth. It's the telling of completely unexpected, almost inexplicable events. The story of a virgin birth, of a Christ child, of a single intervention by God into time, and through this intervention, the redemption of mankind. What it undoubtedly is a doorway through to a completely different realm. To consider the Christian story is to consider the reality, the possibility, that all we see around us are shadows compared with this blinding, singular light, which, if we can only turn around and accept it, has the potential properly to illuminate everything. Someone described that as driving down the road and that the oncoming headlights dazzle you. But if you turn round and look behind you, you can see the light illuminating everything. In the past 2 years, continues the article, our sights as individuals and as a nation have been singularly restricted. Our movements have been restricted. Our priorities have been restricted. And it's perfectly possible that as a result, we've become a servile, cringing, limited people, requesting permission to rejoin our loved ones, desiring beyond all things the right to attend a football match, or a cinema, or a theatre, or a concert. Yet this cannot be the total of our ambitions or worldview, any more than should be the simple, endless search for living forever. After all, what is the value of a life lived long if it's not also lived deep? So now he's saying you should go to church and find this where God breaks through and transforms things. Mary was transformed because here she could see. Yes, she started to store up the accounts of Jesus and to note what people were saying. All her expectations have been confirmed. And for the shepherds, their lives have been completely overwhelmed and changed. God cares for them, and he breaks through to transform their lives, and they are ecstatic. Let's not forget that joy that Christmas brings. Amen.
Amen.